Well, let's do this because I do have some stuff from Waitangi, and there's some things that are relevant to it, and there's some things from Waitangi which are relevant to us being the show as well. So let's have a start here, shall we? These are just a few of the images from us being up there. You might have seen some of them. There's a couple of things I wanted to mention along the way. It was cool seeing people from. Oh gosh, see what happens here? I do that, and it opens up in a different window. There you go. Cool seeing people. That was a bit strange seeing my face walking towards me. But buffer shirts up there, BHN gear up there. Of course, you heard from this crew when we talked. It was Hanimara. Yeah, sorry, names just jumped out of my head. Who was one of the guys who? The correct word is enhanced the treaty. That was some imagery from up there. It was a really good time, good vibes. It was chill, lots of cool stuff going on. Watching the waka do the mass. March was cool. March is probably the wrong word. This is not Waitangi. This is up by the Stone Store. It's just all happening at the same time. So this is not Waitangi. This is just normal something happening up by the Stone Store. Beautiful waiata being heard from all over the place. Listen to those cicadas. I miss cicadas being in Dunedin. Makes it feel like summer. I'm going to show you one thing as well. I caught up with some of the whānau from Labour.
Can I ask who the two people on the left of Chewie, Chewie is?
That's Rachel Brooking. So she's Dunedin MP. And this lady here, I think, was working with Chewie. Excuse me if I've got that wrong. But the Greens had a big presence up there. I think you guys have seen that photo. That was a funny story. Me and Tamitha kind of walked past each other. Then we both did that look back at the same time. And I went, Tamitha, and she went, Pat! And so we got a chance to catch up, which was cool. A couple of, that's probably my favourite photo from the day. I don't know why I look like I'm 7 foot tall, but that was just coming across Chloe and Ricardo was there as well, manning his merch. I don't know why he didn't jump into the photo. It was a really chill time. I've come away from it with some observations as to what's going on. I think this really is New Zealand's Mecca, and I'm not meaning to call this a religious experience, but in the Muslim faith, the belief is you have to get to Mecca at least once in your life. I feel the same about this now. I think every New Zealander should get to Waitangi at least once in their life. It was surprisingly easy to get around. People were talking about 80,000 people, and there was parking set up that you could basically drive to the town next door and they'd bus you back in. Didn't have to do that at any stage. We always got to park down on the waterfront. I mean, there was 80,000 people there, but we always got a park. We could walk in there as well. Yeah, it was cool. It was just a good time, and I'm very keen to do it again, and I'm very keen to take the show there again. Originally, we had sort of planned that maybe Chewie would come up and meet us, and that sort of fell through. It was quite good that it fell through because we were going to do an official show from up there, but the group that said we could use their studio, they kind of fell through. So I feel like it was a bit of a recce week for me. I was on honeymoon as well. That's a secondary point, but it felt like it was a bit of a recce week to go, how can we do this? That's the Aotearoa Liberation League. Eru was in there as well. Apparently there's no protest flags allowed on Waitangi. There's no protest messages allowed on Waitangi other than on Waitangi morning when you cross the bridge in the Hikui. Yet this was the day before for the parliamentarian. And I guess technically they're not protest flags, but you can see pretty simply it's the treaty covered in blood, and we've seen these before around New Zealand. So they got, I think, probably pretty close to the bone of what you were and weren't allowed to do. And there was a couple of sad sights as well. Old Karen had his face on the lower marae. That was a surreal experience, seeing the antithesis of Waitangi having a presence there. And there's one thing that I wanted to show you all. This is what I saw at Te Papa. So this, and I'll get the years right by zooming in, this is the South Island in 1846. The red that you see is the land owned by Māori. What's important is the date 1846, right? So the red is the land owned by Māori in 1846. I thought it would just go to the next one, but it hasn't. This.
Can I add some context to that last one as well in a second?
Sure. This is the land owned by Māori in 1860. So that's 14 years later. So from 14 years, 1846, land owned by Māori. 1846. 1860, land owned by Māori. Oh. I was shocked at that number. Like if this had have been 1846 and like 1972, but 1846, 14 years later, 1860. Context, please, Ems.
So I was at that first one. If you show the first map that you were looking at.
I can.
I just noticed on that first one, see how the Otago Peninsula in the Otago area is already owned?
Yeah.
So my colonizers, let's be honest, came here in 38, 2 years before the treaty was signed.
Yep.
And they had already basically taken over a lot of that land. Probably more north of the peninsula though, but technically that's where my colonizers came from and decided that was theirs. So.
And notice, this is Banks Peninsula, right, out by you. Mm-hmm. But what's not owned by Māori then is all around the irony. I'll use the ironic word, the foreshore, because of course that's where the boats come to. That's where the docks are. That's where commerce and trade would happen. Now, I'll plead ignorance. I don't know the full story here. I don't know how much of that land, if any, was sold by Māori versus how much was taken from Māori. But just the idea that basically the whole of the South Island in the space of 14 years goes from 99% Māori owned to 1% Māori owned is shocking. I'm going to do some more research on that. So here's my takeaways from Waitangi. The first one, which I've said a couple of times on the show while I was phoning in, is this is not a tourist event. It was quite surprising to me. I was standing, and no, I'm not. No, that's wrong. I guess I hadn't really thought enough about it, but I was standing watching the Kingitanga Pōwhiri, and I looked to my left, and about 25 metres down, there was another Caucasian guy, but everyone in between me and him was Māori. Looked to my right, pretty much everyone Māori. It was local iwi, it was Māori coming to see other Māori. And it was a bit different for the politician, but it was still majority Māori. You look at the markets, especially on Waitangi Day, there's a sports field up near the Upper Marae, and they set up a whole market just for that day. There was markets the whole week, but on the sports field there was one on actually Waitangi Day. It was all about Māori health, Māori mental health. It was all, it was actually stuff aimed at Māori. It wasn't like come and buy a plastic tiki. I mean, they were there, but the majority of it was Māori tents for Māori people, or Māori education to learn more. It was really interesting to see that it really is it's a homecoming rather than a tourist event. And that's why I think if you're anything like me, and I've always said that, look, I'm so white, I'm nearly pale blue. I'm of Irish ancestry. My mother's maiden name could have literally made me a Paddy Mulligan, which is your consummate Irish name. Like my family calls me Paddy, her maiden name was Mulligan. I literally could have been that, right? But I've always said that if you're a part of New Zealand's story, then the Māori story is a part of your story. You can't get away from it because the Māori story is a part of the New Zealand story. So for all of us, even if we don't bloodline into Māoridom, the Māori story should be a part of our story. So I think everyone should get to the birthplace of the modern version and New Zealand today and where it came from, the modern version came from that day and that moment. I mean, there's a lot more than that, obviously. There's 1,000 years of history behind that as well. So it's not for tourists. Also, the thing I took away from it was the cowardice of National, and it'll probably show in the article we're going to look at tonight. So maybe we start with Because are we showing the one news story for the polls tonight? Is that one going to be?
Yes.
Because that talks a lot about Waitangi, so maybe we'll flow on into that next day. They talk in there about Luxon not being there, but you got to stop, because I was talking to John Campbell, and I'm like, hey, I forgot I did that, but I actually said to John Campbell, have you seen Nikki No Boats? And he knew what I was talking about, which is quite funny. And he goes, no. And I left it there. But later in the day, I was like, well, where's Chris Bishop? Where's Simeon Brown? The top 4 weren't there. So National wouldn't let their top 4, yeah, you can go away if you want to run away from me, that's fine. Snobbing me again. Been home for long enough. So it's not that the Prime Minister missed it. It's that the Prime Minister and number 2 and number 3 and number 4 missed it. And then there's Erica Stanford at number 5. She was there. That is cowardice. That is disrespect, right? It's, to me, that feels shocking. And then on top of that as well, you'll hear him say it tonight, Luxon's like, other prime ministers have missed Waitangi. It's a normal thing. It's not a normal thing. It's not the norm. It's literally not the norm. Yes, Helen Clark missed 9 years. It's not the norm. And when did she miss it? She missed it when Māori wanted her head over the, metaphorically speaking, over the foreshore and seabed. So she didn't go when she was in times of trouble. Cowardly. Luxon didn't go when he's in times of trouble. Cowardly. 2 didn't go, 3 didn't go, 4 didn't go. 5 went. And also, he keeps saying, I skipped Waitangi. Well, hang on. Brownlee was there. Rachel Booking was there, who was a Dunedin MP. And guess where they were the next day? Both of them, on Waitangi Day, were with Luxon and Akaroa. So actually, don't buy this, I couldn't be there. Because, yeah, the parliamentarians do the day before. They do the 5th. Going to Waitangi for the Prime Minister is being there on the 5th, not the 6th. It's the 5th. And they were there. Brownlee was with you the next day. It's just cowardice and it's just horseshit. And I don't give a flying fuck what colour your politician are. If you're not going to be there, especially if you're one of the leaders, especially if you're one of the people that people want to talk to, then you're a coward. Absolute coward.